7-year-old boy locks himself in baby sister's room to escape stepfather and refuses to come out until his mother arrives. When the mother arrives and discovers what is happening, she immediately calls 911. The rain fell in heavy sheets across the empty suburban streets of Arlington, Massachusetts, creating small rivers along the gutters. 7-year-old Owen Matthews clutched his Pokemon umbrella tighter as he navigated the 4 blocks between Pierce Elementary and home, his sneakers already soaked despite his best efforts to avoid the deepening puddles. The unexpected early dismissal due to a transformer explosion had thrown everyone's schedules into chaos, but Owen felt a strange uneasiness that went beyond the disruption of routine. His house appeared ahead through the gray curtain of rain, a modest 2-story colonial with white siding and dark blue shutters. The sight of James's silver Audi in the driveway made Owen's steps falter. His stepfather's car shouldn't be there, not at 1:30 in the afternoon. James was supposed to be working in his home office, the converted sunroom that Linda had helped him set up when they got married 6 months ago. 6 months. Owen remembered the wedding clearly, his mother radiant in a simple cream dress, James looking like something out of a magazine in his tailored suit, and baby Emma, just 6 weeks old then, sleeping peacefully in Owen's grandmother's arms throughout the ceremony. He remembered how James had knelt down to his level during the reception, green eyes sparkling as he promised, "We're going to be a real family now, buddy. I'll take care of all of you." The memory made Owen's stomach twist as he approached the front steps. Things had changed so gradually that he couldn't pinpoint exactly when James's smile started looking different, tighter, less real. When his voice began carrying an edge that made Owen's shoulders tense. When the sound of something breaking during an argument became less surprising than silence. Owen could hear Emma crying as he reached for his house key. The sound was muffled but distressed, coming from upstairs where her nursery was located. He knew her different cries by now. This wasn't her hungry cry or her tired cry. This was her scared cry, the one that made something in his chest hurt. The front door creaked slightly as he pushed it open, and Owen winced at the sound. The house smelled wrong. Usually, it smelled like the lavender plugins his mom liked or whatever James was cooking for dinner. He'd always made a big deal about being a great cook, one of the things that had impressed Owen's mom early in their relationship. But today, the air was heavy with a different scent, one that reminded Owen of how his real dad's breath used to smell on bad nights, before the accident. "Just leave it," James's voice carried from the living room, sharp and slurred. "I said I'll handle it." "No, you listen, Dash." There was a crash, followed by cursing. Emma's crying grew louder upstairs. Owen stood frozen in the entryway, his wet umbrella dripping onto the hardwood floor. He should call out, announce his presence like he was supposed to. But something primitive in his brain, something older than words, told him to stay quiet, to listen. 3 weeks isn't that long, James was saying to someone on the phone, his voice rising. "I've got prospects. Better prospects than that joke of a firm ever. No. Don't you dare talk to me about responsibilities. I'm handling my responsibilities just fine." Another crash. Owen flinched but managed to stay silent. Through the archway leading to the living room, he could see James's reflection in the window pacing, gesturing wildly with a glass in his hand. Empty bottles glinted on the coffee table. Emma's cry hitched into that gulping sound she made when she'd been crying too long. Owen's hands clenched into fists. James was supposed to be taking care of her. That was the whole arrangement that had convinced Owen's mom to go back to her nursing job. James working from home, watching Emma, being the perfect modern dad. Except Owen had started noticing things. The times Emma's diaper went unchanged too long. The bottles left empty in her crib. The way James would rush around making everything look perfect just before mom got home. "You know what? Screw Daniels and his whole department," James shouted into the phone. "They can take their client portfolio and shove it up their dash." Owen's backpack chose that moment to slip from his shoulder, hitting the floor with a soft thud. The living room went silent. "I'll call you back," James said flatly. Footsteps approached the archway. "Owen? That you, buddy?" Owen swallowed hard, his throat suddenly dry. "Yes," he managed. We had early dismissal. Power's out at school." James appeared in the archway, and Owen instinctively took a step back. His stepfather's usually neat appearance was disheveled, tie loosened, shirt partially untucked, dark hair sticking up as if he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. His eyes were bloodshot, and that tight smile Owen had grown to dread stretched across his face. "Early dismissal, huh?" James said, taking another sip from his glass. "Didn't they call to let me know?" "They tried calling everyone's emergency contacts," Owen said carefully. "But Miss Rivera said some calls weren't going through because of the storm." "The storm?" James repeated, his smile widening but his eyes remaining cold. "Right. Well, isn't this perfect timing? Just perfect. You know what your mom and I always say about perfect timing, right, Owen?" Owen didn't answer. His mom and James had never had any saying about timing. But he'd learned that sometimes James remembered things that hadn't happened, created whole conversations and rules out of thin air, and it was safer to stay quiet than to correct him. Emma's crying reached a new pitch upstairs. James didn't even glance toward the sound. "You know, buddy," James said, taking a step closer, "I think you and I need to have a little talk about what you might have heard just now. About being a team player. About keeping family business in the family. What do you say?" Owen clutched his wet umbrella like a shield, rain still dripping steadily onto the floor. Upstairs, Emma cried and cried and cried. This wasn't going to be a good afternoon. Not good at all. Owen stood rigid in the entryway, his mind racing as James took another step toward him. The umbrella trembled slightly in his grip, water pooling around his feet. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but Emma's crying from upstairs anchored him in place. He couldn't leave her. "Let me take that umbrella, buddy," James said, reaching out. His movements were slightly unsteady, but his eyes had taken on a predatory focus that made Owen's heart hammer. "You're making a mess on your mother's floors. I'll clean it up," Owen said quickly, voice barely above a whisper. "I promise. I should go check on Emma first." James's hand shot out, grabbing the umbrella. The sudden motion caused him to slosh his drink, droplets of amber liquid spattering the hardwood. His face darkened. "Look what you made me do," he growled, yanking the umbrella away. The force of it spun Owen slightly, and he had to catch himself against the wall. "Always making messes, aren't you? Always poking your nose where it doesn't belong." Upstairs, Emma's crying took on a desperate edge. Owen had never heard her sound quite like this, and something in him shifted. Fear gave way to a different emotion, one that felt older than his 7 years, burning hot in his chest. "She needs her diaper changed," he said, surprised by the steadiness in his voice. "And she's probably hungry. I'm going upstairs." He turned toward the stairs, but James's hand clamped down on his shoulder. "We're not done talking, Owen. Family business, remember? About what you might have heard on the phone." "You're hurting me," Owen said quietly. James's grip tightened for a moment before he suddenly released Owen, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "I'm not, I wouldn't dash." He knocked back the rest of his drink, glass clinking against his teeth. "Listen, buddy, things are complicated right now. Adult things, work things. Your mom doesn't need to worry about it. Understand? I'm handling it." Owen thought about the bills he'd seen James hiding in his desk drawer last week when he was looking for tape. About the credit card statement with big red letters that James had quickly crumpled up when Owen walked into the sunroom. About how the heat had been turned down so low lately that Emma needed extra blankets. "I'm going to check on Emma," he repeated, edging toward the stairs. James's face contorted. He threw his empty glass against the wall, the crash making Owen jump. "You're just like them, aren't you? Looking down at me, judging me. I'm doing my best here. Your precious mother has no idea what it takes to maintain this lifestyle, to keep up appearances." Owen didn't wait to hear the rest. He bolted up the stairs, his wet shoes slipping slightly on the carpeted steps. Behind him, James shouted something, but the words were drowned out by Emma's wailing and the blood rushing in Owen's ears. The nursery door was ajar. The sight that greeted him made his chest hurt. Emma was red-faced in her crib, tears streaming down her cheeks, her diaper visibly soaked through the thin sleeper she wore. The room was cold, and Owen could see his breath in the air. "I'm here, Em," he whispered, rushing to the crib. "Big brother's here." He'd helped his mom with Emma enough times to know what to do. The changing table had supplies, and he quickly grabbed a fresh diaper and wipes. Emma's crying softened slightly at his presence, her tiny hands reaching for him. Heavy footsteps on the stairs made him freeze. "Owen!" James's voice was closer now, harder. "Get down here right now." Owen looked around the room frantically. The baby monitor on the dresser was unplugged. He'd noticed James doing that more often lately, but his mom never knew because it would be plugged back in and working perfectly when she got home. Next to it sat his mom's spare iPad, the one she kept upstairs for checking on Emma during her breaks at work. A plan formed in his mind, born of desperation and a child's simple logic. He grabbed the iPad and the baby monitor with one hand, supporting Emma against his chest with the other. It was awkward, but he managed to get them both to the rocking chair in the corner. "You're really trying my patience, Owen." James was at the top of the stairs now. "I swear to God, if you've told anyone if you breathe a word about what you heard Owen's hands shook as he plugged in the baby monitor and turned it on. He pressed the power button on the iPad, praying it still had charge. The screen lit up, 82% battery. His mom's baby monitor app was already installed. The doorknob rattled. "Open this door." James pounded his fist against the wood. "Open it right now." Owen looked down at Emma, who had quieted to hiccuping sobs against his chest. "It's okay," he whispered, though his voice quavered. "I won't let anything happen to you. Promise." He turned the baby monitor toward the door and pressed record on the app, just as James began to throw his weight against the wood. The afternoon had just begun. The door shuddered in its frame with each impact, but Owen had already sprung into action. Years of watching superhero movies had taught him about barricades, and now he put that knowledge to desperate use. He gently placed Emma in her crib, tucking her favorite yellow blanket around her, before dragging the white wooden rocking chair toward the door. "You've got 5 seconds to open this door." "Owen." James's voice was almost unrecognizable now, a guttural sound that made Emma whimper. 5, 4. Owen wedged the rocking chair under the doorknob the way he'd seen in movies. The chair was lightweight, but it was tall enough to brace against the door at an angle. Next, he pushed Emma's heavy dresser inch by inch across the carpet. His arms burned with the effort, but adrenaline gave him strength. 3, 2. The door rattled violently. Owen could hear James's labored breathing through the wood, smell the alcohol on his breath even from inside. The dresser finally touched the rocking chair, adding its weight to the barricade. 1. A tremendous crash shook the entire door. The rocking chair scraped back an inch but held. Owen scrambled to check the baby monitor feed on the iPad. The camera's view perfectly captured the hallway where James stood, face contorted with rage, shoulder pressed against the door. "You think this is funny?" James's laugh was hollow. "Playing fort in there like a baby? What about Emma? She needs her bottle, Owen. She needs changing. You're being selfish." Owen looked at his sister, who had quieted somewhat. Her diaper still needed changing, but she seemed calmer now that he was with her. He kept one eye on the iPad as he gathered supplies from the dresser he'd just moved. "I can take care of Emma," Owen called out, trying to keep his voice steady. "I help Mom all the time." Another crash against the door. The rocking chair creaked but stayed firm. "You think you're so smart, don't you?" James's voice dropped lower, more menacing. "Always watching, always judging. I see how you look at me, but you don't understand anything about adult responsibilities. About what it takes to provide for a family." Owen carefully lifted Emma from her crib, laying her on the thick carpet. His hands trembled slightly as he changed her diaper, but he'd done this dozens of times before. He kept talking, partly to keep track of James's location, partly to soothe Emma. "It's okay, Em," he whispered. "Remember how Mom showed me the airplane game during changes? Zoom, zoom." Emma's eyes focused on him, her tiny fingers grabbing at the air. Outside, James had gone quiet, somehow more terrifying than the shouting. "Owen," James's voice was suddenly honey-sweet, making Owen's skin crawl. "Buddy, I'm sorry I lost my temper. You know how stressed I've been with work. Let's talk about this. Man to man." Owen secured the fresh diaper and redressed Emma, his mind racing. The iPad showed James pacing the hallway, running his hands through his hair, that false smile plastered on his face. In the background, Owen could hear more glass breaking downstairs. The company's just going through some restructuring, James continued, his voice rising and falling unnaturally. That's all it is. Nothing for your mother to worry about. We're a team, right? We keep family business in the family. Emma started fussing again, hungry now that she was clean and comfortable. Owen glanced at the door, then at the window. They were on the second floor, far too high to risk any escape. He needed to think. The baby bag was still in the room. His mom always kept a spare ready. Owen found a bottle and the container of formula, thanking whatever luck had left them here. He'd watched his mom prepare bottles enough times to know the ratio of powder to water. You're really starting to piss me off. James's fist hammered the door, the sudden return to rage making Owen spill formula powder on his hands. Do you hear me? When I get in there dash, a loud crash from downstairs interrupted James's tirade. Owen froze, bottle half prepared in his hands. Through the baby monitor's audio, he could hear something that made his heart leap. The distinct sound of Mrs. Hilton's voice calling through the mail slot. Hello? Is everything okay in there? I'm hearing a lot of noise. James's face on the iPad screen transformed into something terrible. He glanced toward the stairs, then back at the nursery door, trapped between two problems. Everything's fine, he shouted down the stairs, his voice strained with fake cheerfulness. Just doing some furniture rearranging. Another crash echoed from somewhere in the house. James swore under his breath and disappeared from the iPad's view, his footsteps pounding down the stairs. Owen clutched the bottle tighter, his hands shaking as he finished preparing it. He knew Mrs. Hilton, the elderly widow next door who always gave out full-size candy bars at Halloween and kept fortune cookies in her pockets to hand out to neighborhood kids. More importantly, he knew she played mahjong every Tuesday with her friends until late afternoon, which meant she'd come home early today just like him. Just like today's storm had knocked out power at school. Just like today's events had brought James's facade crashing down. Owen looked at the iPad, then at Emma accepting her bottle, then at the barricaded door. Something his mother always said floated through his mind. There are no coincidences, Owen. Just moments when the universe lines everything up to make something important happen. He hoped, with everything in his 7-year-old heart, that this was one of those moments. Mrs. Hilton stood at her kitchen window, a forgotten cup of jasmine tea growing cold in her hands. The sounds from next door had been getting progressively worse over the past hour. At first, she tried to dismiss them. Young families were often noisy, and the Matthews had always been good neighbors. Linda was a delight, and little Owen often helped her carry groceries from her car. But this was different. She watched James Crawford's silhouette move past his living room window, gesturing angrily. Something shattered inside the house. The third crash she'd heard since coming home early from her mahjong game. The storm had made her joints ache too much to concentrate on tiles today. No, you listen to me. James's voice carried faintly through the walls. I told you to stay out of this. Mrs. Hilton set down her tea with trembling hands. In 43 years of living in this house, she'd learned the difference between normal household chaos and something more sinister. Her late husband had been a police officer, and his voice echoed in her memory. Trust your instincts, May. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Upstairs in the Matthews house, she could see the nursery window. The light was on, and occasionally she caught glimpses of Movement Owen's small shadow passing back and forth. The baby's crying had stopped, but that almost worried her more. Her cell phone sat on the counter, Linda's number programmed into it months ago, just in case you ever need to reach me about Emma. Mrs. Hilton had thought it was sweet then, a new mother's overcaution. Now her fingers hovered over the contact. Another crash, a child's voice, too muffled to make out the words. James's answering roar. Mrs. Hilton pressed dial. In the nursery, Owen sat in the corner furthest from the door, cradling Emma as she dozed after her bottle. The iPad propped against the wall showed James storming around downstairs, alternating between shouting into his phone and throwing things. The baby monitor app was still recording everything. "Hello?" Mrs. Hilton's voice drifted up through the open window. "Linda? I'm sorry to bother you at work, but..." Owen's heart leaped. He could just barely make out the conversation. No, I'm sure it's nothing. It's just, there are some concerning noises. And Owen came home early. Yes, I saw him go in, but..." A tremendous crash from downstairs made both Owen and Emma jump. His sister began to whimper, and Owen gently bounced her the way their mom did. "Did you hear that?" Mrs. Hilton's voice was sharper now. "Linda, I think you should come home. Something's not right. James is..." "No, Owen and Emma are upstairs. But who are you talking to?" James's bellow was so loud it made the windows rattle. Through the iPad, Owen watched in horror as his stepfather stormed toward the front door. "Have you checked your baby monitor today?" Mrs. Hilton's voice was fading as she stepped away from the window. "Linda, I really think dash..." The sound of their front door being thrown open cut through everything else. Emma began to cry in earnest. "Mind your own business, you nosy old dash." James's voice broke off suddenly, and Owen could imagine him remembering the neighbors could hear, trying to maintain his facade. "Mrs. Hilton, what a surprise. Everything's fine here, just a bit of remodeling. I was just checking because I heard dash. I said everything's fine." The baby monitor picked up the sound of Mrs. Hilton's startled gasp, followed by a door slamming so hard the walls shook. Emma's cries grew louder. "Shoo! Shoo!" Owen whispered, rocking her gently. "Mom's coming. Mom's coming now." Through the window, he could see Mrs. Hilton hurrying back into her house. The iPad showed James pacing the hallway like a caged animal, running his hands through his hair, muttering to himself. "Ruining everything. Nosy neighbors. Have to fix this." Owen clutched Emma tighter as heavy footsteps started up the stairs again. The afternoon sun was starting to slant through the window, creating long shadows across the nursery floor. How long until his mom got home? How long could the barricade hold? James appeared on the iPad screen again, his face transformed by rage. He grabbed a small side table from the hallway and lifted it over his head. "Owen!" The first impact of the table against the door made the whole room shake. "Open this door right now!" Emma screamed. Owen closed his eyes, pressing his face against his sister's soft hair. "Please hurry, Mom," he whispered. "Please hurry." Linda Matthews stood frozen in the hospital break room, her phone pressed against her ear, Mrs. Hilton's words echoing in her mind. The baby monitor app was open on her screen, but she'd been too busy with patients to check it during her shift. Now, with trembling fingers, she pressed play on the most recent recording. The sounds that filled her earbuds made her blood run cold. In the nursery, Owen had wedged himself and Emma into the small space between the crib and the wall. The barricade still held, but each impact of the table made the door frame splinter a little more. Through the iPad, he could see James's face contorted with effort, sweat darkening his shirt collar as he slammed the furniture against the door again and again. "Your mother dash crash is going to hear dash crash. About what a disrespectful dash crash. Little brat you're being." Emma had cried herself into hiccups, her tiny body shuddering against Owen's chest. He'd run out of formula an hour ago, and the diaper supply was running low. Worse, the room had grown colder as the afternoon wore on. James must have turned the heat down even more. "I know you're scared," Owen whispered to his sister, wrapping her blanket tighter. "But Mom's coming," Mrs. Hilton called her. "We just have to wait." The splintering sound from the door grew louder. On the iPad screen, Owen could see James step back, breathing heavily, examining his progress. The table had left deep gouges in the wood. "You think this door can keep me out?" James's laugh was unhinged. "You think you can hide in there forever? What about when your mother gets home? What are you going to tell her about why you locked yourself away? About why you're turning her against me?" Owen stayed silent, but his mind raced. The baby monitor was still recording. Every crash, every threat, every moment of James's meltdown was being captured. He looked at the iPad's battery, 41% left. It had to be enough. A new sound drew his attention to the window. Police sirens, but distant. Were they coming here? Had Mrs. Hilton called them too? Or was it just a coincidence? Another patrol car on another street? James heard them too. The hallway camera showed him freezing, head cocked toward the sound. For a moment, something like clarity seemed to cross his face. Then his expression hardened into something worse than rage calculation. Owen. His voice dropped to a whisper that the baby monitor barely picked up. Last chance, buddy. Open this door right now and we can fix this. We can explain everything to your mom together. About how you got confused. About how you overreacted. About how you made up stories because you were jealous of the new baby. Owen felt sick. He knew this voice. The one James used when convincing Mom that her memories of arguments were exaggerated. That the bruise on her arm had come from bumping into a door. That she was just tired and imagining things. If you don't open this door, James continued, his whisper taking on an edge, I'll have to tell your mother about all the lies you've been telling. About how you're trying to ruin our family. About how you can't be trusted with Emma anymore. Emma stirred against Owen's chest, making small distressed sounds. He bounced her gently, trying to keep his own breathing steady despite the terror coursing through him. The sirens grew louder, then faded again. Not coming here after all. That's it. James's facade shattered completely. He heaved the table back, muscles straining visible through his sweat-soaked shirt. No more games. The impact this time was different, more focused, striking the weakest point of the door frame. Wood cracked. The dresser scraped back an inch across the carpet. The rocking chair's joints creaked ominously. Owen looked desperately around the room. The window was too high, the closet too obvious. They were running out of options, and the barricade was running out of time. Through the iPad, he watched James step back for another blow. The afternoon sun caught his stepfather's face, illuminating something Owen had never seen there before. Not just anger or frustration, but pure, undiluted hatred. The table swung back. Emma whimpered. Owen closed his eyes. And then, cutting through everything else, came the sound they'd been waiting for. The distant but distinct slam of a car door, followed by running footsteps on the front walk. Mom was home. Linda's hands shook so badly she nearly dropped her keys on the front step. The baby monitor feed played in her head on loop, James's rage, Owen's quiet determination, Emma's cries. Every moment she'd missed, every sign she'd ignored, every excuse she'd accepted crashed over her like a wave. The front door was unlocked. She pushed it open to find devastation. Broken glass glittering on the hardwood, pictures knocked from walls, furniture overturned. The living room looked like a war zone. James? Her voice cracked. Owen? A crash from upstairs made her jump. Then James appeared at the top of the stairs, his shirt soaked with sweat, a small hallway table gripped in his hands. He dropped it immediately, his face shifting into a mask of concern so practiced that Linda felt sick recognizing it. Linda, thank God you're home. He started down the stairs, reaching for her. Owen's having some kind of episode. He's locked himself in the nursery with Emma, and I've been trying to dash. Don't. Linda stepped back, her hand finding her phone in her pocket. Don't come any closer. James froze mid-step, then his face darkened. You've been talking to that nosy Hilton woman, haven't you? Baby, it's not what you think. Owen came home early. He overheard a work call that upset him, and he's been acting out. You know how he gets sometimes. How he makes up stories, Mom. Owen's voice drifted down, small but steady. Mom, are you there? I'm here, sweetheart. Linda called back, her eyes never leaving James. Are you and Emma okay? Emma's okay. I changed her and fed her, but we're out of formula. And it's really cold up here. James took another step down. Linda, listen to me. He's exaggerating. I turned down the heat a little to save on the bill, that's all. If you just let me explain about work. I heard everything. Linda's finger hovered over the emergency dial on her phone. The baby monitor recorded everything, James. Every threat, every crash, every moment you tried to break down that door. Something shifted in James's eyes. That same darkness Owen had seen upstairs. His hands clenched into fists. You're choosing to believe a 7-year-old's lies? After everything I've done for this family? His voice rose with each word. I've kept a roof over your heads. I've taken care of your kids. I've been fired for 3 weeks without telling me? Linda's voice was steel now. Been drinking instead of caring for Emma? Been terrorizing my son? James lunged down the remaining stairs so suddenly that Linda barely had time to back away. Her hip hit the entryway table, sending keys clattering to the floor. You ungrateful dash. He reached for her arm, fingers grasping. M.O.M. Owen's scream from upstairs was desperate. The iPad shows everything. He's hurting you. James's grip tightened painfully. Always watching, always spying. That little dash. Linda's free hand emerged from her pocket. Her phone displayed with 911 already dialed and connected. Ma'am? The dispatcher's voice came through clearly in the sudden silence. We received a call from this address. Is everything all right? James's face went through a cascade of emotions. Rage, fear, calculation, and finally, a terrible sort of calm. He released Linda's arm slowly. Officers are already en route, the dispatcher continued. Please stay on the line. No need, James said softly, that familiar manipulative smile spreading across his face. This is all just a misunderstanding. Linda, tell them everything's fine. Tell them dash. The sound of sirens cut him off. Real ones this time, growing closer by the second. Red and blue lights began to flash through the front windows, illuminating the destruction of their living room in surreal pulses. Mom, Owen called down again. I hear sirens. It's okay. Baby, Linda called back, her voice remarkably steady. Help is here. Everything's going to be okay now. James looked from Linda to the window and back, like a cornered animal. His mask cracked completely, revealing something that made Linda's blood run cold. You've ruined everything, he snarled, starting toward her again. But Linda was already backing toward the front door, phone still raised, voice clear as she spoke to the dispatcher. Please hurry. My husband is violent. My children are barricaded upstairs, and I don't think he's going to let me leave. The first pounding knock on the door came just as James reached for her again. Police, open up. The afternoon was about to end very differently than James had planned. The next hour unfolded like a surreal dream. Police officers filled the house, their voices firm but gentle as they separated Linda and James, their radios crackling with coded messages. An officer named Rodriguez stayed with Linda while her partner handcuffed James, who had switched tactics entirely, crying now about misunderstandings and begging Linda not to do this to their family. But Linda's attention was entirely focused upstairs. Owen, she called up, Officer Rodriguez by her side. Sweetheart, it's safe now. Can you open the door? There was a scraping sound from inside the nursery furniture being moved. Through the splintered door, Linda could hear Owen's labored breathing as he dismantled his barricade. When the door finally opened, the sight broke her heart. Owen stood there, Emma cradled protectively in his arms, both of them pale and exhausted. The room behind him told the story of his desperate afternoon. The heavy dresser pushed across the floor, the broken rocking chair wedged against the door, the iPad still propped up recording everything. Mom, was all he managed before Linda gathered both her children into her arms. My brave, brave boy, she whispered into his hair, feeling him shake with delayed terror and relief. My clever, wonderful boy, you kept her safe. You kept yourself safe. I'm so sorry I didn't see. Ma'am, Officer Rodriguez spoke softly. The paramedics would like to check the children, just as a precaution. And we'll need statements, but we can do that at the station if you'd be more comfortable. Linda nodded, not letting go of her children. Through the window, she could see Mrs. Hilton standing in her driveway, wringing her hands as she spoke to another officer. In the street, neighbors had gathered to watch James being placed in a patrol car. His protests now turned to threats about lawyers and revenge. He unplugged the baby monitor. Owen said suddenly, his voice muffled against Linda's shoulder, but I plugged it back in, and I recorded everything. So you'd know I wasn't making it up this time. This time, Linda pulled back slightly, looking at her son's face. Owen, has he accused you of making things up before? Owen's lower lip trembled. He said I was jealous of Emma, that I was trying to ruin your happiness. But Mom, I swear, I saw him hurting you. The bruises, they weren't from doors or accidents. I wrote it all down in my Pokemon notebook, all the dates and times, like they showed us in school for the bullying log. Fresh tears spilled down Linda's cheeks. Let's get you both checked out, she managed. Then we'll tell the officers everything. No more hiding. No more pretending. Emma stirred in Owen's arms, reaching for her mother. As Linda took her, she noticed how expertly Owen had bundled her against the cold, how he'd managed to keep her clean and fed through the whole ordeal. You're going to be an amazing big brother, she told him, wrapping her free arm around his shoulders. You already are. Together, they walked downstairs, past the evidence of James's rampage, past the officers photographing the damage, past the shattered remnants of their old life. Outside, the storm had cleared, leaving the late afternoon sky a brilliant, washed-out blue. Mrs. Matthews? Officer Rodriguez called softly. There's something else you should know. When we searched the house, we found some concerning financial documents in your husband's office. Credit card statements, overdue notices, and what appears to be a second phone with some troubling messages. We'll need to go through everything, but Linda squeezed Owen closer. Tomorrow, she said firmly. We can deal with all of that tomorrow. Right now, my children need me. As they walked toward the waiting ambulance, Owen looked up at his mother. Are we going to be okay? Linda looked down at her son, this 7-year-old who had shown more courage and presence of mind than many adults would have. At Emma, now sleeping peacefully, unaware of how her big brother had protected her. At Mrs. Hilton, hurrying over with a thermos of what was probably her famous honey tea and a determined expression that said she wouldn't be leaving their side anytime soon. Yes, she said, and for the first time in months, maybe years, she felt the truth of it in her bones. We're going to be more than okay. We're going to be safe. Detective Lisa Reeves sat across from Linda at the station, a child's Pokemon notebook open on the desk between them. Its pages were filled with careful, 7-year-old handwriting, each entry dated and timed with remarkable precision. March 15th, 7:42 p.m., James grabbed Mom's arm during dinner when she asked about the credit card bill. It left red marks. March 28th, 3:15 p.m., found empty bottles hidden in the garden recycling. James said not to tell Mom. April 2nd, 2:30 p.m., Emma crying for 45 minutes. James playing video games with headphones. Had to pretend I was getting water to go check on her. Linda's hands trembled as she turned another page. The entries continued, becoming more frequent and detailed over the past 3 weeks. Owen had documented everything: the unplugged baby monitor, the cold nursery, the missing formula, the hidden bills, the frightening phone calls. Your son is exceptional, Detective Reeves said softly. Most adults don't think to document abuse this thoroughly, let alone a 7-year-old. His notes, combined with the baby monitor recordings and Mrs. Hilton's statement. Well, let's just say Mr. Crawford won't be coming anywhere near your family for a very long time. In the next room, through the observation window, Linda could see Owen sitting with a child services counselor. He looked impossibly small in the big office chair, his legs dangling, but he was talking steadily, pointing to pictures he'd drawn to help explain the events of the afternoon. Emma slept in a portable crib nearby, under the watchful eye of a volunteer. He tried to tell me, Linda whispered, in his way, asking to help with Emma more often, staying up until I got home from late shifts. I thought he was just being helpful, being responsible. I didn't see. Abusers are skilled at manipulation, Detective Reeves replied. They isolate their victims, create doubt, rewrite reality. The fact that Owen saw through it, that he found a way to document it and protect his sister. Mrs. Matthews, your son is a hero. Linda watched as the counselor gave Owen a high five. For the first time that day, she saw a small smile cross his face. The financial investigation is still ongoing, Detective Reeves continued, but preliminary findings suggest Mr. Crawford has accumulated significant gambling debts. The second phone we found contained communications with loan sharks, betting sites, the college fund, Linda realized suddenly. Emma's college fund that James insisted on managing. Owen's savings account. Detective Reeves nodded grimly. We're tracing everything. You'll need to speak with a financial advisor, but you should prepare yourself. It seems Mr. Crawford has been systematically draining accounts for months. A knock at the door interrupted them. Officer Rodriguez entered, carrying a stack of papers. The emergency protection order has been granted, she announced, and Mrs. Hilton is outside. She's insisting on taking everyone home with her tonight until the locksmith can change the house keys. Says she's already made up the guest room and something called kanji. Despite everything, Linda felt a small smile tugging at her lips. Owen loves her kanji. She makes it whenever he's had a bad day. Smart woman, Detective Reeves said, closing the Pokemon notebook carefully. You've got good neighbors, Mrs. Matthews. Good children. A good support system. Use it. Linda stood, gathering her composure. What happens now? Now? Detective Reeves handed her Owen's notebook. Now you take your children to Mrs. Hilton's. You eat kanji. You hold your babies close. Tomorrow, we'll connect you with victim services. Start the process of untangling the financial mess and begin building the case. But tonight is for healing. Through the window, Owen had noticed her. He waved, pointing excitedly at something the counselor had given him. It looked like a junior police badge sticker. Even after everything he'd been through, he was still just a little boy. Her little boy. Ready to go home. Sweetheart? She called through the door. Owen nodded, carefully gathering his drawings. As he helped pack up Emma's diaper bag, Linda watched him check and double-check that they had everything they needed, already back to being the protective big brother. Together, they walked out of the station into the evening air, where Mrs. Hilton waited with open arms and promises of warm kanji and safer tomorrows. The storm had passed. They had survived. The morning sun streamed through new curtains in a different window, casting warm patterns across Owen's Pokemon bedspread. From down the hall of their second-floor apartment, he could hear Emma's happy morning babbles mixing with his mom's gentle singing. Their new normal. He sat up, reaching for the journal on his nightstand. Not a Pokemon notebook this time, but a proper leather-bound one given to him by his counselor, Dr. Martinez. For when you need to write things down, she'd said. Good things too, not just worried things. Today's entry would definitely be a good one. It was moving day. The last of their boxes would finally be coming out of Mrs. Hilton's garage and into their new apartment. Their real home, Mom had called it. Their fresh start. Owen? His mom appeared in the doorway, Emma on her hip. Someone's been asking for her big brother. Emma reached out with both hands, her whole face lighting up at the sight of him. At 8 months old, she was already pulling herself up on furniture, desperate to follow Owen everywhere he went. Morning, Em, he said, accepting her familiar weight as Mom transferred her over. Ready for moving day? Bobby ABA. Emma replied seriously, grabbing at his pajama shirt. Mom sat on the edge of his bed, her nurse's scrubs already on for her afternoon shift. She looked different these days, younger somehow, lighter. The shadows that had lived under her eyes during the James months were gone. Mrs. Hilton's bringing her famous dumplings for lunch, she said, smoothing Owen's bedhead. And Detective Reeves might stop by to see the new place, if she's in the neighborhood. Owen nodded, bouncing Emma gently. He liked Detective Reeves. She always treated him like his opinions mattered, never talked down to him about what had happened. She'd even let him sit at her desk last week while she explained to Mom about James's court date. Is he? Owen started, then stopped. Dr. Martinez had been helping him learn that it was okay to ask questions, even hard ones. Is he still in jail? Mom finished gently. Yes, sweetheart. And he's going to be there for quite a while. The financial crimes alone. She trailed off, and Owen knew she was thinking about all the meetings with lawyers and bank people, all the paperwork spread across Mrs. Hilton's dining room table late at night. But then she smiled, touching the little heart-shaped locket she'd started wearing, the one with pictures of Owen and Emma inside. "But that's not what today is about," she said firmly. "Today is about filling our new home with good things. Speaking of which," she reached into her scrubs pocket and pulled out a small wrapped package. "I was gonna save this for after the move, but I think you've waited long enough." Owen shifted Emma to one arm, accepting the package. Inside was a shiny new key on a Pokemon keychain. "Your very own key to our very own home," Mom said softly. "No more spare room at Mrs. Hilton's. No more temporary fixes. This place is ours, sweet boy. Really ours." Owen clutched the key tight, feeling its edges press into his palm. "Real. Safe. Home." Emma squirmed in his arms, reaching for the keychain's Pikachu charm. Her happy babbling filled the sun-warmed room, and for a moment, Owen just sat there, holding his sister, watching his mom smile, feeling the weight of the key in his hand. Today's journal entry would definitely be a good one, the best one yet. A year had passed. The late summer sun slanted through the windows of their apartment, catching dust motes in its golden beams as Owen helped his mom assemble Emma's new toddler bed. "No more crib," he said, watching Emma toddle around her room with determined energy. At 18 months, she was a force of nature, babbling constant conversations in a mix of real and made-up words. Her favorite was still Owen, which she used for everything from actual calls for her brother to general expressions of excitement. "Are you sure you're ready for this big change, Em?" Mom asked, tightening the last screw on the bed rail. Emma responded by climbing onto her new bed, still covered in its familiar yellow blanket, and declaring "my room," with the certainty only a toddler could muster. Owen smiled, but his hand drifted unconsciously to the doorknob, checking it the way he still did sometimes. The new lock was solid, installed by the building's maintenance team to his exact specifications. Not that they needed it anymore. James was serving 8 years for domestic violence, child endangerment, and financial fraud. Detective Reeves had made sure of that. "Hey," Mom said softly, catching his gesture. "You're doing it again." "Sorry," Owen mumbled, pulling his hand back. "Don't be sorry." Mom patted the space next to her on Emma's new bed. "Come here, both of you." Owen sat down and Emma immediately climbed into his lap, her favorite spot. Mom wrapped an arm around them both. "Do you know what I see when I look at this room?" she asked. Owen shook his head. "I see the bravest 8-year-old in the world, who turned a scary place into a safe one, who protected his sister, who taught his mom what real courage looks like." She squeezed him closer. "This isn't just Emma's room, Owen. This is the room that saved us. Because of you." "Owen," Emma agreed, patting his face with sticky toddler hands. Owen looked around the bright, warm room. The walls were a soft yellow now, decorated with butterfly stickers Emma loved. Her toys were scattered across the carpet, evidence of a happy, secure toddler. The baby monitor still sat on the dresser, but it was just a baby monitor now, nothing more. "Dr. Martinez says it's okay that I still check the locks sometimes," he said quietly. "She says trauma responses take time to heal." "Dr. Martinez is very wise," Mom agreed. "And she's also the one who helped me understand something important. That sometimes the smallest people can be the biggest heroes." Emma, as if on cue, let out a huge yawn. Mom laughed softly. "Speaking of small people, I think someone's ready for her first nap in her big girl bed." They tucked Emma in together, Owen carefully arranging her stuffed animals the way she liked them. As they turned to leave, Emma called out sleepily, "Story, Owen?" Owen paused in the doorway, looking back at his sister. She'd already nestled into her new bed as if she'd always belonged there. Yellow blanket pulled up to her chin, eyes heavy with approaching sleep. "Once upon a time," he began, his voice steady and sure, "there was a very brave little girl and her big brother, and they lived in a house that wasn't very happy. But then," Mom continued softly from beside him, "they found their way to a new home, where they were safe and loved and protected. And do you know what the very best part of that home was?" Emma was already drifting off, but Owen finished the familiar story anyway, his hand resting lightly on the solid doorknob. "The best part was that they never had to be scared again. Because in this home, Every room was a safe room, and they all lived happily and bravely ever after. The afternoon sun painted everything in shades of gold as Owen gently closed the door, leaving it open just a crack, the way Emma liked it. Not because they needed to barricade it, not because they needed to hide, but because in this home, every door could be both open and safe.